5. Political ideologies and traditions. Political ideologies are comprehensive frameworks of ideas that combine philosophical principles, moral assumptions, and practical strategies for organizing human society. They provide the intellectual blueprints that guide political behavior, legitimize authority, and inspire collective action. More than abstract theories, ideologies serve as interpretive lenses, through which individuals and communities understand political life, justice, and power. Each ideology embodies specific conceptions of human nature, freedom, equality, and the proper role of the state. Ideologies evolve through history, shaped by changing social and economic conditions. Some arise as revolutionary responses to oppression or inequality, while others emerge to preserve order and continuity. Once institutionalized, they influence law, education, culture, and economic policy, becoming embedded in the collective consciousness of societies. In essence, political ideologies attempt to answer three enduring questions. What is the nature of human beings and society? What is the ideal relationship between the individual and the state? How should power, wealth, and authority be distributed? The following sections analyze 7 foundational ideologies: liberalism, conservatism, socialism, communism, nationalism, feminism, and environmentalism, exploring their origins, key principles, variations, and enduring relevance in modern political life. 5.1 Liberalism, Origins and Core Principles. Liberalism emerged in 17th and 18th century Europe during the Enlightenment as a powerful critique of absolute monarchy, hereditary privilege, and religious orthodoxy. Its philosophical foundation lies in the belief in individual autonomy, rationality, and natural rights. Thinkers such as John Locke, Adam Smith, and John Stuart Mill provided its intellectual scaffolding. Locke's 2 treatises of government argued that humans possess inherent rights to life, liberty, and property, and that government exists by the consent of the governed. To protect these rights, this notion formed the basis of constitutionalism and the modern idea of limited government. Economically, Adam Smith's The Wealth of Nations, 1776, introduced the idea of the invisible hand, asserting that self-interest operating within free markets could promote the general welfare without central control. John Stuart Mill later expanded liberalism's moral dimension, advocating for individual freedom and utilitarian ethics, arguing that liberty was essential for human progress and the pursuit of truth. Political and economic dimensions. Politically, liberalism upholds constitutional democracy, separation of powers, and the rule of law as safeguards against tyranny. It views the state as a protector of rights, not an instrument of domination. Economically, classical liberalism favored laissez-faire capitalism, where market forces determine production and exchange. However, by the 20th century, liberalism evolved into modern or social liberalism, recognizing that unregulated markets could produce inequality and social injustice. Thinkers like John Maynard Keynes advocated state intervention to stabilize the economy, while John Rawls, in A Theory of Justice, 1971, introduced the principle of justice as fairness, asserting that inequalities are acceptable only if they benefit the least. Advantaged members of society. Contemporary liberalism. In contemporary politics, liberalism underpins most democratic institutions. It manifests in commitments to human rights, pluralism, gender equality, and freedom of expression. Nevertheless, globalization, technological disruption, and rising populism have challenged liberal norms. Critics from both left and right argue that liberalism's focus on individualism fosters alienation, erodes community bonds, and enables corporate domination. Defenders respond that liberal democracy remains the most adaptable framework for balancing freedom with equality in a diverse and globalized world. 5.2 Conservatism. Philosophical foundations. Conservatism emerged as a response to the radical egalitarianism and rationalism of the Enlightenment, particularly in reaction to the French Revolution 1789. Edmund Burke's Reflections on the Revolution in France 1790 articulated the conservative vision, a defense of tradition, continuity, and moral order against abstract theories of perfectibility. Burke saw society as a partnership between the living, the dead, and the unborn, emphasizing the cumulative wisdom of tradition over the experimental zeal of revolution. Key principles. Conservatives value order, stability, and authority, viewing human nature as imperfect and in need of restraint. They see social institutions, family, church, and community as essential for nurturing virtue and maintaining cohesion. Hierarchy and duty are regarded as natural features of human society, ensuring responsibility and respect for inherited institutions. Change, when necessary, must be gradual, respecting historical continuity rather than pursuing utopian visions. Variants of conservatism. Traditional conservatism upholds monarchy, religion, and social hierarchy as sources of legitimacy and stability. Economic conservatism emphasizes fiscal responsibility, deregulation, and free enterprise, often aligning with neoliberal economic policies. Social conservatism seeks to preserve moral and cultural values, frequently grounding them in religious or national identity. Neoconservatism, particularly in the United States, fuses free market economics with assertive foreign policy, promoting democracy and moral leadership abroad. Contemporary challenges. In the 21st century, conservatism faces a paradox: how to preserve tradition in societies. Defined by rapid change and cultural pluralism, many conservative movements wrestle with globalization, migration, and the rise of secularism, striving to reconcile the defense of national heritage with economic modernization and democratic inclusion. 5.3 Socialism. Origins and goals. Socialism arose in the 19th century as a moral and economic critique of industrial capitalism. The Industrial Revolution transformed economies but produced stark social inequalities, harsh labor conditions, and exploitation. Early utopian socialists like Robert Owen, Charles Fourier, and Henri de Saint-Simon imagined cooperative communities where wealth and labor were equitably shared. The movement gained theoretical depth with Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, who developed a scientific analysis of capitalism in the Communist Manifesto 1848 and Das Kapital 1867. They interpreted history as a class struggle between the bourgeoisie owners of production and the proletariat workers, predicting that capitalism's internal contradictions would lead to its downfall and replacement by socialism, a transitional phase toward communism. Core values. Socialism emphasizes collective welfare, economic equality, and social ownership of production. Unlike liberalism, which centers on individual rights, socialism stresses solidarity and cooperation. It seeks to align economic production with social needs rather than profit motives, believing that markets left unchecked generate concentration of wealth and social injustice. Under socialism, the state or community often plays a central role in redistributing resources, providing public services, and ensuring that all citizens have access to health, education, and employment. Variants of socialism. Democratic socialism blends socialist principles with parliamentary democracy, advocating progressive taxation, welfare systems, and labor rights within a capitalist framework. Examples include the Nordic social democracies of Sweden, Norway, and Denmark. Revolutionary socialism calls for the overthrow of capitalist systems through class struggle, emphasizing workers' control of production. Market socialism integrates limited market competition with state ownership, as seen in certain post-socialist economies and China's mixed model These variations reveal socialism's flexibility as both an economic theory and a moral vision of justice. Global influence. Socialism has profoundly influenced labor movements, decolonization struggles, and social welfare reforms across the 20th century. The creation of welfare states in Europe and the rise of anti-imperialist movements in Asia, Africa, and Latin America drew heavily on socialist thought. In practice, however, socialist experiments produced mixed outcomes, from the equitable prosperity of Scandinavian models to the authoritarian excesses of centralized planning in the Soviet Union. Critics contend that socialism risks inefficiency and suppression of individual initiative, while supporters argue that it remains essential for achieving equity and social solidarity. In an age of widening global inequality, contemporary relevance. In the 21st century, socialism has re-emerged in new forms, such as democratic socialism in Western politics and eco-socialism, which links social justice with environmental sustainability. The global financial crises of 2008 and the COVID-19 pandemic revived debates about public welfare, wealth redistribution, and state responsibility. Younger generations increasingly view socialism not as dogma, but as a pragmatic,